Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to the Bootcamp YouTube channel. My name is Dr. Chaparro, and I'm going to be providing you with a great YouTube video. So let's get started. Today's topic is going to be social exam prep bootcamp, that's us. And I'm going to cover some ASW exam updates, some exam tips, and we're going to be doing some practice questions. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I want to introduce myself to you. Thank you once again for watching my video. My name is Dr. Edith Chaparro. I'm a licensed clinical worker. I'm also a doctorate. I also have a doctorate in psychology, and I've been delivering services for over 20 years. And my background includes academic work, also clinical work. I have a private practice, and I also teach at NYU. And I own and I co-owned and co-created the Social Work Exam Bootcamp. We've been providing social workers with licensure nationwide this is our 17th year, August 2023. So I don't know when you're going to watch this, but when it turns August 2023, it is our 17th year, and I'm just excited about that in itself. In terms of leadership and volunteer work, I've held several leadership roles at the NASW. Currently, I am the vice president of NASW, the New York City chapter. And if you ever have any questions about that, feel free to contact me. And here is my contact info. I prefer text message. It's a bit easier to communicate. And my email for the bootcamp is socialworkbootcamp@gmail.com. All right, let's get started. First, I want to talk a little bit about the exam in itself. Right, the name of the exam, the organization that provides this exam nationwide is called the ASWB. Okay, that's the board for the exam. And before I say anything, our boot camp, we assist with all licensure levels. So whether you're studying for your master's or clinical, that's what we focus on in our program, right? So about the exam, it is a computerized exam, right? Unless you have some type of accommodations, they do provide paper and pencil examinations. However, you have to qualify for that based on certain criteria. Okay. Now, the exam consists of 170 questions. The questions are multiple choice format. Then you have 20 questions that are unscored. So you are being scored on 150 questions. Okay. Now, since, as you can see here, I'm a little highlighted, since January 2023, the exam made a little bit of a change. They combined the usual 4-question choice, answer choice, with a 3-option answer choice. So previous to January 2023, the exam answers were A, B, C, or D, right? But now they also have exam choices that are A, B, and C. Right? They got rid of the D. So it's a combination of both. It's a combination of the ABCDs and also the ABCs. So the next time you take your test, you'll be seeing that. Okay, so don't be alarmed. There's many social workers that are not aware of this yet, but hopefully if you're watching this video, now you are aware. Also, you have 4 hours to complete the exam. Again, unless you have some special accommodations, they do extend those hours based on if you have some type of diagnosis, like a learning diagnosis or a diagnosis of something else. They could provide you with accommodations, but the standard is computerized exam, 170 questions, 20 are unscored. So the score is based on 150. There's a combination of 4 or 3 option answer key, and you have 4 hours to complete your test. So what does that really mean, this 4 hours? When you're training to take your exam, right? Whether you're training yourself by taking practice tests, or whether it be a large practice test of 170 questions, or if you're studying and training yourself with 10 question quizzes or 50 questions, allow yourself, while you're studying, 1 minute per question, because that's going to really help you in case you get on the test and let's say you feel nervous, or it's taking you too long to do one question. It'll allow you, you're already training yourself to work on your timing before you get to that big day, and you sit in front of the computer and you have a computerized timed exam, which is something you might not be used to. So when you study, my advice is start timing yourself right away. Whether you're doing a 5-question quiz or a 10-question quiz, you already want to get into that mode of timing yourself. All right. One last thing I wanted to tell you is when you are practicing and studying, let's say you, or even on the big day, right? The exam day, whenever you get to question about like 60, I want to say 60, make sure you've been there for like around an hour or so. Okay. So let's say an hour passes by, you look at what number you're on, you should be comfortably around number 60, right? Let's say you're on question 30 and you've been there for an hour. That means you're gonna have to speed it up a bit, right? So that means you're going a little too, you are going a bit slow. Let's say you've been there for an hour and you're on question 80. That means you're going too fast, and that's not good because you might be skipping over important information, right? So timing is so important, and that's just part of studying. Studying is not just studying content material or even learning how to take exam questions. Obviously, that's both very important, but you want to already get into that mode, exam mode of timing yourself. Okay, let's move on. This is a question I get very frequently, and I'm so glad I'm able to present it to you today. Let me just move something. All right, exam scores. We'll ask all the time, like, what do I need to score to pass, right? So this information I researched on the ASWB website, so it's not something I'm not making up, right? So this is really great graph, especially if you're a visual learner, which most of us are. Like I mentioned, there's 170 questions, so let's pretend this is the exam, okay? This is question 1, and it goes all the way up here, all the way up here, all the way to question number 170, all right? So, and like I mentioned, 20 are unscored, so that brings us down to 150. So this is your test. You're doing all these questions, and you're reaching the final number 150, all right? So how do they score that? So each exam is different. They come up with different questions and they jumble them up, I guess like a random selection of questions. And then when you sit in front of a computer, you're given those questions 150. So let's not think of these, just this bold 150. Now, the way they score it is pretty much you need to get between this range of questions correct. So you need to get between 90 to 110 and hopefully above, right? But this is the main range that they look at, 90 and 110 questions correct, right? So basically, and this is why we are so strict in our program during our classes and our workshops, we really emphasize that when you're studying, it might not be in the beginning, but as you get better and then you improve, when you study, you want to be in this range also, okay? You don't want to be getting 70 correct or a 60, right? Or even an 80 or an 85 when you're studying. You want to be up here. You want to be that A+ student, basically, right? Because let's say you're studying and you were taking a test that's like 150 questions, right? let's say you get 120 right, or 125 or 130 correct. So you're in the safe zone because you're all the way up here when you're studying. Might take you some time, right? And also every exam is different. So some exams are more difficult. Some could be a little more easier. I'm not saying there is an easy test because they are very difficult and challenging. But if you're studying and you're doing really great and you're mastering all the information, and you should be in the comfortable number up here. Let's say 120, 130, just to be extra sure. If you're studying and you're scoring like 70 questions correct, even 80 or 85, you see how you're still below this number. I would be even not even that safe in the 90s. I would even want to be like above if you're doing a quiz that's with 150 questions. And then you could break it down differently depending on the number of questions you're studying. Then you would figure out what my range would be. If I only am studying with 50 questions, then that means you have to get 45 questions correct, right? You want to be as close as possible to that higher number, all right? And that is some great advice because sometimes people are studying. Like I said, we've been providing exam prep for 17 years, and we often see people that miss it by the 1.2. Why is that? Because they're still here. They haven't pushed hard enough to be up here. And by push hard enough, I mean cover all bases. Do you know your material? Do you know how to answer exam prep questions? Exam strategies. Also, are you addressing any other external factors that might be getting in the way? And I'll cover a few of those right now. Okay. So this is a graph and it's pretty good because it's helped a lot of people to visualize where they need to be to pass their tests. So another thing I wanted to say is if you get an exam and you only need 90 questions to pass, right? And you say, well, how come I only need 90 and my friend that took it needs 110? So apparently if it's 90 questions, like some of the exam questions might be a little bit more challenging because you need to get less correct. But either way, the way I see it is every test is difficult. So you need to be extra careful and extra prepared. All right. And just something I always tell people is that are studying, the ASWB exam is just definitely more difficult than any practice exam. So that's why you want to be above and beyond in this range up here. Right? You don't want to be out of the zone down here. You want to be above and beyond up here when you're studying. All right, I hope that was very helpful. So here are some main errors and issues that I came up with that I noticed that does occur, right? When people are just missing the mark, right? Because, okay, I studied everything and I'm great, but why do I keep failing or what's going on here? So there's some, like I mentioned before, external factors that you need to address. They might be some of these, they might not, right? But these are just some things that I've seen over and over again. So for example, do you change your answers? That's a big one. Are you changing answers? And it doesn't even have to be physically, like changing it from C to D, C to D, something like that. Are you changing your answers even mentally, in your mind, like, oh, I'm gonna choose C, but I think it's D now. Things like that. It's because you're still not confident and ready for the test. So when you're changing answers, it really makes a difference on the exam. Remember, keep that number in mind, that 120, 130. If you keep changing answers, those numbers go down and they go down very fast. And you don't want to be out of the zone, right? Below the range. Timing. So I spoke about timing a little while ago. You do not want to be reading too fast. And a lot of us do read fast, especially social workers that work in a very high pace position, like maybe hospital social workers, school social workers, depends on what you're doing. And a lot of different like crisis areas or mobile crisis. You're used to reading fast, getting things done. So you're gonna have to train yourself to slow it down, okay? Slow it down, do that 1 minute. If you're taking a question and it's taking you 20 seconds, then be careful because that could be a big error, an issue that will get in the way of passing. Too slow. Let's say you're reading a question. Remember, your goal is a minute, a question, right? And it's taking you 5 minutes to read a question. Then something's going on and you have to say, hey, I need to work on this and speed it up. Okay. Skipping. This is a big one. When you're taking your exam, do not skip any questions and leave it blank, thinking that, later on I'll go back and I'll figure it out. So let me just mark it off, right? And then go back. That's a big error. Why? Because what's going to happen is a lot of things. Number one, you might be too tired at the end, and to go back and start answering more questions, like you just want to be done, right? And that could be a big mistake because you might not be in the same like energetic mood that you were, hopefully energetic, when you first started the exam, right? So you don't want that to happen. Okay. Another thing is, what if you run out of time? What if you run out of time and you have to go back and fill out all these blank ones that you kind of just left, right? Because you did take time to read them the first time. So with that being said, if you're going back, you used up that time. So, you don't want to make that error and run out of time on your exam just because you left something blank. So answer it no matter what, do your best and answer it. Worst comes to worst, all right, fine. Maybe you want to review something. I wouldn't change any answers anyway. But let's say that's, like something that you really want to do that, but always answer a question on the exam. Do not leave it blank. Blank answers are marked incorrect, right? Choosing to answer while studying. So that happens a lot too. You just choose C and D, and let's say the answer is C, while you're studying, and you're like, I got it right. So you're kind of cheating yourself because you're thinking you're getting all these questions correct, but you're not. When you get something correct, it's because you chose one answer and the answer is correct. So just be careful. Make sure that you're choosing one answer. Just start forcing yourself to make that change, okay? And get into that habit of choosing just one answer while studying, not two. The overthinkers. Stay away from overthinking, overanalyzing. It's very easy to do that. And I know it's difficult to change because that's what you're used to doing. So if you're thinking too social worky, like thinking that you're thinking about your job, or you're thinking about all the wonderful experience you have, or what your professor said in class, that stuff you have to just leave out of the study when you're studying and taking your test, of course, right? Cramming, okay. So I know some people love to cram, but if you're gonna cram, at least give yourself enough time to cram. Don't cram like overnight or something, or 2, 3 days, because that's silly. This is a license exam, it's a board exam, it's a very serious test. So you just want to be careful not to do that. Plus, you're just gonna stress yourself out. Reading and not comprehending the main issue and the problem. So we're gonna actually do some questions today, and I'm gonna show you what that means. You have to really kind of try to do your best to understand like the main issue so that you could actually answer the main issue that's there presented in the question. Okay. And test anxiety. Do you have test anxiety? Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Well, in our workbook, we do have a test anxiety scale, but one of the upcoming videos I have, and I will have more, so stay tuned. They're already kind of being recorded already. I'm going to go over how to measure if you do have test anxiety, right? And then maybe some ways to address it. And if you do know already that you have test anxiety, I do have an e-course that you could do on your own that to address test anxiety, because it is real and you don't want just your anxiety to get in the way of passing, right? It's just silly. You need to address your issues, just the way we tell our clients and help so many people, and you want to do the same for yourself. And another thing is don't give up, right? Nothing is perfect. you might have failed it. You might have failed it 3, 4 times. Hopefully not, right? But don't give up on the test. Don't give up on yourself, because there's going to be an exam that you'll be able to pass. They give different questions and different exams, and sometimes some of them might be more difficult than others. And maybe you got that very difficult one, and then maybe the next one will be a little bit easier for you. Or you can go through my list here and try to address any of these main errors and issues that I see coming up a lot that just really like hold people back, right? And that's one reason I am doing this video, because I see it over and over, and I try to help as many people as I can. Hopefully with this video, I can reach a lot of social workers that are studying for their tests, or any type of MHCs and others that are studying. I noticed that these main errors come up so frequently, and when they are addressed, I notice that their scores go up tremendously, when they're studying. So just by changing a few things, you can make a difference on your exam score, and then it make the biggest difference is passing, right? I just wanted to add one more thing. Don't compare exam questions. Like if you see a question and then you're gonna say, I saw this already somewhere else. Each question is very different. So you don't want to make that mistake, because then you're kind of like just cheating yourself by doing that. Okay, so we're done with that. Oh, okay. Real quick, once again, because some people jump in or they forward or whatever, in case you didn't see the beginning. If you need to reach me, I do have classes. So some of you are in my class, because we always ask our students, our exam bootcamp students, to watch the videos for extra information. But if you do want to connect with me, this is my number, email. Follow us on Instagram, and I post things there also. And here's our website. Okay. And if you're not studying for any type of exam and you're still watching this, welcome. Welcome, and I hope this video is informative. All right, guess what we're going to do now? We're going to do a few practice questions. Okay, so here's the first one I found. And the way I'm going to read it is I'm going to read it like I'm taking a reading comprehension test. I'm not going to read it like a social worker. Remember, I'm not going to overanalyze or think about it. Why? Because it's going to get me in trouble. It's in one of the error lists. It's on the list of errors, right? So I'm going to read this for you, even though you might be reading it already, I'm pretty sure. The first thing is, are you reading too fast right now? Right? And I'm pretty sure some of you are going to be like, yes, how did she know? Right? So just by making those little changes, you want to keep an eye on yourself, observe your own behaviors, your own exam prep behaviors. When you read it, you could pretend you're a teacher, right? Maybe some of you have been teachers, or those teachers that are teaching reading. So a 17-year-old client. So far here, I see an age. See, like, you want to really read it with meaning, not just read it for the heck of it, or read it to figure out what they're saying. You really want to put some meaning into a question. So far I have an age. I don't know what's going on yet. They're throwing an age at me. Why? Because they're telling you it's important. There's no fluff in exam questions. You might have heard that before. There is no fluff. Every single word is important, because the answer is in the question. The answer is here in the question. You just have to know where to look for it. All right. And this is what we teach like crazy in our exam prep. We teach you how to find the answer. All right. I'm going to teach you here anyway. So we have an age so far, and then it says moderate, right? So here's a specifier, intellectual disability. And guess what? This is a diagnosis, okay? And it's moderate. All right, that's what they're giving us so far. Know your DSM-5 so that when you see this, you'll be able to identify it. Because some people say, hey, I didn't see any DSM-5 questions. I didn't see this. Guess what? This is a DSM-5 right here. So you need to know your diagnosis, because it's embedded in questions. It might not ask you, hey, what's moderate intellectual disability? But if they put it into a question, right, it's going to be important. It's important for you to know. Anyway, so is meeting with a social worker, that's you, right? At a family counseling agency, so you know this is where you are working, okay? Because of school failure. Okay, so that's why they're coming in so far, right? Now, the client expresses, so you have to say, like, well, who is this client, right? The desire to go to work rather than school. So this is what we would be considered direct request because he's asking you for something. It's a request that he wants to work rather than school. And then you say, well, who is this client that we're talking about? They're talking about this person up here, right? And I'm going to use my mouse. You'll probably see it. All right. So now that we know that our client expresses rather to go to work rather than school, it sounds like he's able to express himself and he's able to tell you something, right? Now, then they say the parents are supportive. Now, the reason they throw that in there is because this client is a minor, all right? That's the only reason they kind of put it in there. And not only is he a minor, but he has this diagnosis. So in this case, you know that you could go ahead and help this client with what he expressed. So if it's about work, and this is what I mean by the answers in the question, guess what? The answer is going to be about work. So without even looking at the answers, I'm already kind of figuring out what the answer is because I don't even need to look at the answers because the question is already telling me what the answer is. They're telling me that I'm going to have to address a 17-year-old client because he's the one that's expressing something. I'm going to have to address the fact that he wants to work. And then I have to address the fact that he wants to work rather than school. And also, they gave me the age that he's only 17, right? They gave me a diagnosis, but since the parents are supportive, I know I could just address the main direct request. Now, that's not it. I also have to look at my last sentence here because the last sentence is going to tell me what to do with what I found. The last sentence tells you what to do. It's no mystery. It's literally telling you, guess what? What is the most, that's a qualifier there, appropriate assistance the social worker can give to who? To the client and to the desire that he wants to work rather than go to school. All right, great. So did that take me more than a minute? Yes. But we didn't even finish everything yet. But just by looking at that took me a while. But that's how you want to start. You want to start studying like that so that you could get into the routine of reading it carefully so that it could turn into 1 minute. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure that you used to just probably read it and try to figure it out. But you want to break down the questions so that you really understand what they're asking. Now, you're gonna read all your answers, right? Encourage the client to remain in school, discuss available vocational programs, help the client find employment. Now, the way you eliminate is you're going to eliminate things that do not go with the question and with the main concern. What's the main concern? That he wants to work rather than go to school, right? If that's the main concern, let's take out one that does not apply to the main concern. The one that doesn't apply to the main concern first is A, because A says that you want him to remain in school. That doesn't go. Actually, that's opposite, right? So that's perfect because when you want to eliminate the furthest possible answer. And that's the furthest because it talks about school and he wants to talk and he's talking about work. So that's out. So now we're between B and C, and this is where all the magic happens. Because normally it's very easy to get between two answers, right? But the name of the game is you want to get the correct answer. So now we have to figure out which one would I do, right? Because I have to give him appropriate assistance. Now, what can I do? I work at a family counseling agency. What can I do there to help him as a family counselor or whatever you are, just therapist there probably doesn't really say, but being that you're a social worker there, doesn't tell you your exact role, but it does say counseling agency. what can we do, right? What can we do to give him the most appropriate assistance? So let's look at B, discuss available vocational programs. Now, I'm taking my time. Vocational program, would this help a 17-year-old with moderate intellectual disability? My answer is yes, right? Because vocational programs are going to, first of all, test him to figure out what can he do, right? Let's look at C, help the client find employment. So how would I do that if I wouldn't know where to begin? I'd have to figure out what his skills are. It's a whole big thing, and that's not really my role here. Even though he says he wants to go to work, but the most appropriate assistance I could get him is to connect him with someone or something that will help him, like a service. So my answer is going to be B. Okay. Now I'm going to just make sure it's B. That's like one little step you want to do at the end. You want to just confirm your answer. So you could ask yourself, well, does B provide the most appropriate assistance? Yes, because I'm discussing available vocational programs. Then you could say, does B assist the client that I need to address? Yeah, it does, because it's a 17-year-old with moderate intellectual disability, and he wants to work rather than go to school. So that's what you have to do, and you have to leave it like that. Don't say like, but what if this, or I never worked in a family agency, so what would happen if I get this question? But you notice we didn't really talk about whether or not we have that experience. We're just talking about the words in the question, and that's how you would get that answer. So the answer here is B. All right. Number 2, a client complains. So this is kind of like a strong word here, to her social worker, and that would be you, of intrusive thoughts. Okay, so this sounds like a symptom, but we're not sure what it is. It just says intrusive thoughts. The client asks, again, someone asking for help, for help to manage the thinking, right? They're actually asking us to help them manage this thinking. Someone's coming in like, hey, help me manage my thinking. What should the social worker, that's us again, do first? So when you see these first and next questions, you can see a bunch of those on the test. Always kind of like take a step back and ask yourself, should I assess, or is this safety? You can ask yourself those 2 questions if you see first. So then you have to say, well, let me read all the answers first, right? But when you see first, sometimes you have to ask yourself, because, a lot of the exam is like assessment or addressing, like assessment and addressing the problem. And a lot of the possibilities also could be like safety and things like that of an action. So let's look at the answers. Refer the client to a psychiatrist for possible medication. Ask the client to describe the content of her thoughts. Teach the client thought stopping thought replacement. All right, so I saw my answers. Remember, the answers in the question, all they said is, I need help to manage my thinking, right? That's all they're saying. So we want to, guess what? First of all, do a first. Am I assessing to help her manage her thinking? Or is this like safety or something? So I didn't see any words about safety or anything like that. If she's just telling me she can't manage her thinking. So let me take out, A, because I don't see anything about her having to go to a psychiatrist right away if I don't know what she's even thinking, right? So I'll be between B and C. And before I can even teach them anything, I need to find out what they're thinking. So my answer here will be B, because with a first, you want to kind of assess first and find out, hey, what are your thoughts, right? Now, let's just make sure that my answer B is correct. So, is it the right person here? Yeah, because it's the client that's talking to me. So I am talking to them also. And what am I just talking about? She wants help, or he wants, it is a her. She wants help to manage thinking. So first I need to find out, like, what are you thinking, right? Think of it as a conversation, literally. If you're with a client and they're like, hey, I'm always thinking all this stuff. I need help to manage what I'm thinking about. Um, First of all, what is it that you're thinking about? What are these things that you're thinking about? Even yourself, you will probably respond that way. But maybe on an exam question, you wouldn't respond that way. So you want to think of it this as a conversation that you can plug in. Literally, you can apply your answer, you apply it to what the client is telling you. All right. Okay. So the answer there is B. B is a boy. Number 3, a social worker is providing court mandated services to a child of a divorcing couple. All right. Social worker, that's you so far, is providing court mandated services. So here's another thing for everybody. Whenever you see this court mandated stuff, don't get scared. Don't say, hey, this is probably like, oh my God, they're in trouble. No, you might have every client that's court mandated. Just because it says court mandated, it's nothing different. It's just kind of like they're just trying to tell you what kind of client it is. So don't like overthink that court mandated is something um you know above, or that you have to go above and beyond. It's just an adjective. They're just describing your client. But in this case, you're providing the court mandated services to a child of a divorcing couple. Okay. The court has granted the father sole custody. So they're kind of giving you information. They're trying to tell you, hey, the father has sole custody. That's it. You can't do anything about that. The child's mother demands, that's like a strong word, like, hey, demands a social worker share the child's records with her. What should the social worker do in response? So that's why, once again, that last sentence is so important, because they're telling you, how are you going to respond to this request? And then you're going to say, what request? Remember, this is why the answers in the question, they're telling you already, how are you going to respond to this request? What request? That the social worker share the child's records with her. In other words, you're responding to this sentence here. So that's your job. You have to, it's like a puzzle. You have to figure out, like, what area of the question am I answering? How am I gonna know what to answer? Guess, and the majority of the time, the last sentence is gonna tell you what to do. So you just don't want to neglect that last sentence. You want to make sure you're paying attention to every word. Okay. So now I'm gonna respond to this mother. You have to respond to her. That's what they're saying. Even kind of like that other question. What am I thinking? Guess what? What are you thinking? So the mother's like, I want to see the records. And you have to respond. Now they told you that the father has sole custody and all this stuff, right? So how would you answer her? So look at all your answers, schedule a session with for both parents, disclose all records to the biological mother, provide the limitations of disclosure in writing, encourage the mother to talk with the father. Okay, now, so remember, who are you talking to, right? This is a question I ask students in the class all the time. Dr. Medieto also, we ask, who are you talking to? And in your mind, if you could answer, because I don't know, can't see you, but your answer should be, I'm talking to the mother. So guess what? Your answer has to be about the mother, not anybody else, just the mother. All right, so let's take out anything that has not anything to do with the mother. So I see 2 answers there that do not address the mom's request. And also I see 2 answers that really don't just focus on the mother. I'm taking out A because that talks about both parents. And I'm talking about D because it's telling the mother to talk to the father. And it's not answering her request about the records. So basically your answers have to have something to do with some type of why why you might not be able to show her the records, right? So between B and C, which is your answer here, right? I'll give you a second to figure that out, but I'm going to choose C because I have to tell her, something about the limits, the limitations of why you cannot disclose things to her. Okay. Now, why wouldn't you pick B? Because they told you up here that the father has sole custody, right? And then also you are providing court mandated services, so you have to follow everything they say. So you can't just disclose everything to the mother at that point. Okay, maybe some other time, but not for this exam question. Okay, perfect. So the answer here is C. I'm going to provide the limitations of disclosure in writing. All right, let's do one more. And I'm taking my time with it because you know why? Because I want you to really see how to read the question. Because you could do this on your own each time. And I taught you a few important details about preparing yourself, how to read questions and stuff like that. So try to use it and implement what I taught. So let's look at 4. Maybe you could pause it and read it and see if you get it right. Now that I taught you how to kind of break things down and take your time, right? And then when you study, you can also start timing yourself and see how you do. All right, a social worker, hospital, sorry. So that's kind of already tells you where you are. See, the reading is so important. Hospital social worker sees a 55-year-old Asian woman. So we have an age here so far, and then we see Asian. So maybe it could be a diversity question. We don't know yet, right? Because remember, they put stuff in there for a reason. Doesn't mean it is, but let's check it out. Hospitalized, so she's in the hospital for chronic, that means like long term. Severe is like strong word, abdominal pain. So we have like a physical complaint here, okay? So test conduct do not reveal organic problems. What does that mean? That means that they tested her abdominal pain and they noticed that it's not a physical issue. It's really not a physical problem. So it's called rule out medical. So they ruled out medical for you. Okay. All right. So now it says history reveals that she's a refugee from Vietnam. All right. So she's a refugee. That's a strong word. From Vietnam, the country, who emigrated 15 years ago with her husband and children. So what they're telling you here is she a recent immigrant? No, she's not. So once again, the answers in the question, they're telling you this is not a diversity question because she's not a recent. That if it was recent, then it would turn more into like a more cultural type question. But since it's not, and she's been here for 15 years, she's not a recent immigrant. So just again, this is important. The most appropriate initial, so we're starting in the beginning, we're just assessing, that's all. Assessment of the client's, the most appropriate initial assessment of the client's problem is that she, all right, so our last sentence is important, remember? So what we're doing is we're gonna do an assessment. So they want to know what would be the most appropriate initial assessment. Like what would we look at first? So reading all our answers, A, being abused by her spouse, somatizing emotional pain, experiencing acculturation difficulties, or D, dealing with a midlife crisis. So we found like a whole bunch of words that are going to help us. Once again, the answers in the question. So a lot of things that we were able to get rid of thanks to the question, right? And then we're left with things that are important. So one thing right off the bat is, since we already spoke about it, we know that she's not a recent immigrant. So I'm going to take out C, experiencing acculturation difficulties, because that has to do with recent immigrants. So I'm taking that out, C. I don't know if I said D, but I meant to say C. And then also I'm going to take out being abused by her spouse. Remember the answers in the question. Did we see any words or clues in here or keywords about abuse? No, they don't even talk about abuse at all, or any kind of like suspicion of abuse or something. Nothing is in there. So we could get rid of A. And B or D, okay? Now, all you have to do, once again, is look for the answer here. Do they talk about midlife crisis? They don't. They don't say she's in a crisis, being her age or anything like age-related problems. So somatizing emotional pain. So this could be it, because somatizing is when you feel ill, but it's related to an emotional issue, right? What you feel physically ill, what I meant to say. Physically ill. So does she feel physically ill? Yes, because it says she has abdominal pain. You see that? So now it even says pain here, but this is emotional. But let's check this out and say, hey, yes, this is correct, because all these other answers have nothing to do with, and I was able to like eliminate it as actually I was reading it, because they don't mention anything there, even though in my mind I can actually add information and make it any of those answers, right? It's so easy. But now that I'm teaching you this, you're going to be able to look at the questions and easily find important words in there so that you could start eliminating as soon as you get to your last sentence. All right. So somatizing emotional pain is the answer. B. Why? Because it could match that she has abdominal pain. It's not a physical problem, and she's not a recent immigrant. So we want to assess, why is she having this pain? Could it possibly be an emotional pain? And that's it you're gonna do, and you're gonna move on. Well, I hope that this was helpful. I'm going to have more coming up, so make sure you keep an eye out for our next video. And again, if you need me, you connect with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. And good luck everyone on studying, and we hope to see you soon. Have a great day.